Tools and end of sentence punctuation. Let's start with capital letters. Now, capital letters are used when you start sentences. Start of a sentence, capital letter. But that's not the only use. We only use them for proper nouns. Now, what do I mean by proper nouns? I mean places, names. All these are proper nouns. So, naming places, any type of place, like countries, Egypt, capital E, cities or towns, Tokyo, capital T, rivers, the Thames, capital T, or streets, Downing Street, capital D, capital S, or organizations, Barclays, capital B, or the Omelette Restaurant, capital T, capital O, capital R, or naming parks, Hyde Park, capital H, capital P, and so on and so on. Any type of places. If you name them, capital letter. It's not only places, it's also days of the week, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They all start with a capital letter. And months as well. January, February, March, they start with a capital letter. However, seasons do not. Winter is a small W. Festivals have a capital letter, like the Diwali festival, capital D, or Easter, capital E. So all these names, all these days of the week, months, festivals, what we call proper nouns. And there's something else we call proper nouns, is names of people. Queen Elizabeth, or Boris Johnson, or Churchill. They're all people, capital letter for their names. And for your name, capital letter as well. Adjectives that are made from the proper nouns also have a capital letter. For example, Mexican food. Mexican food, Mexican, capital M. Because Mexican means from Mexico. Mexican comes from the word Mexico. Mexico, the name of the place. So Mexico, capital M. Mexican, capital M. Same thing for a Victorian house. In Victorian house, Victorian comes from Victoria. Queen Victoria, actually. The house that was built during the reign of Queen Victoria. So Victorian is an adjective derived from the noun Victoria. So capital V for Victorian. What has capitals as well are titles of plays, films, books, newspapers, and so on and so on. Compare, for example, taking the metro. I am taking the metro. Metro, small m, is a common word, taking the metro. And I read an article in the metro, meaning in the metro, the newspaper, the metro. Capital M. So you can see the metro with a small m, transport, but the metro with a capital M is the name of a newspaper, capital M. Generally, for a title, each word has a capital letter except what the unimportant words. The unimportant words are like of, the, in, and, not that important, so they don't have a capital letter. For example, a book by the Colombian author Gabriel Garcia Marquez called 100 Years of Solitude. 100 Years of Solitude has a capital letter for each word except for of, small o. Or let's consider the Chinese novel Journey to the West. Journey to the West, capital J, capital W. But to the doesn't have a capital letter. As a general rule, we use a capital for the particular, but small letters for the general. What do I mean by that? Well, let's compare the Queen of England is Queen Elizabeth with there are currently 7 queens in the world. Now, when I say the Queen of England is Queen Elizabeth, the Queen of England, capital Q, England is a place, capital E, Queen Elizabeth, title of Elizabeth, capital Q, capital E. These are particular people, specific people. But when I say 7 queens in the world, I'm talking about queens in general. I am being very generic, so small q. Another use of capital, and that's a very big one. It's I, the pronoun I am, I go, is always capital. Another use of capitals is abbreviations. An abbreviation is when you take the first letter of each word, like NHS, NHS, N for national, H for health, S for service, NHS. VIP, a very important person, VIP, capital, capital, capital. So the initials are capitalized. That's an abbreviation, so 3 words or more, or 2 words, depending on what you abbreviated, reduced into letters. We do have an exception, like TV. TV is short for television, but television is just 1 word, not 2 words, so that's a bit of an exception. I said that capital letters are used with abbreviations. Yes, that's true, but it's not just capital letters with abbreviations. It can also be used with full stops. So let's have a look at full stops now. Abbreviations with full stops, there are 2 types of abbreviation. I say abbreviations with initial letter when talking about capital letters, but an abbreviation is not just initial letter. It could just be a shortened form of a word. So instead of having professor, you have prof. Like a title, Prof Calculus from Tintin. P-R-O-F dot. Full stop there. The full stop there after prof, or the dot if you prefer, full stop, dot, sem, means that we've got more letters following the F here. We've got something missing, which is the S for professor. You don't use a dot if in your abbreviation the last letter corresponds to the full word. What do I mean by that? Look at the word doctor, for example. Doctor could be abbreviated as DR. Now in DR, the R here in our abbreviation is the letter at the end of the full word doctor. So you don't need the full stop after the R, because the full stop would mean that there are more letters followed by that word. Like we've got more letters followed by prof, but in doctor, DR, we don't have more letters following the R of doctor, because the R is the last letter of doctor. So no full stops are needed in there. Same thing with Mr. Mr. M-R, no dots needed, because the R here is also the last letter of Mr. Another use of dots in abbreviations is with small letters, like IE, which is Latin for id est, which means that is. Id est, that is IE. I dot E dot. That's the common spelling of IE. The small letters, not capitals. Something with etc. etc. dot. etc. That's Latin again, which means and so on. With capital letters, you don't need dots at all. That's why for postscriptum, PS is capital P, capital S, but no dots. Although you may have seen it in the past, written it as P, small p, dot, small s, dot. But today, we tend to use the capitals PS rather than the small letters P dot S. There is a debate with AM and PM, as in 3 AM, 3 PM time. Do we put a dot or not? Usually, we put a dot A dot M dot, but it is now more and more accepted not to have any dots. AM without dots, something with PM. So you can see both uses. The dots here are optional, it's more accepted without today. So that's the full stop with abbreviations. But obviously, I've left out the most common use of full stops. I said capital letters start a sentence. Well, what ends a sentence is a full stop. So full stop ends a complete sentence. For example, we invited some journalists and students from the local college to try the product. This was the start of our company. Now, if you look at that sentence, there is a comma in there. And that comma is a mistake. And that's, type of mistake that people make. They don't actually see where the sentence ends. The sentence ends when you have finished your thought. When I say we invited some journalists and students from the local college to try the product, that can stand on its own. So that's what we call a main clause. And this was the start of our company, also stands on its own. This was the start of our company. So we've got two complete thoughts here. So between them, there should be a full stop, not a comma. I say we use full stops after complete sentences, which is true. But sometimes we do use a full stop after an incomplete sentence, like, yes, comma, thank you, full stop. This is incomplete because we don't have a subject and a verb, but it's at the end of a thought, complete thought, yes, thank you, full stop. I mentioned that a sentence ends with a full stop. Well, not always. It could end with a question mark or an exclamation mark. But let's have a look at the question mark first. You use a question mark at the end of a direct question, like, why did we decide to go for this? Now, do bear in mind that some sentences look like a question, but they are not actually questions. It's like an indirect question. In You May wonder why we decide to go for camping, we have a statement. It's not a direct question. So that one ends with a full stop, not a question mark. Remember the question mark when the sentence starts like a direct question. What I mean by that is sometimes your question is so long that by the time you finish your sentence, you have forgotten that you actually started it as a question. For example, can I ask you, if you don't mind, and I know you are busy, to help me with this task because I am really struggling with it and my boss is on my back. You started that one with, can I ask you? So you started that one as a question, as a direct question. So that one should end with a question mark at the end. So that's question marks. When do we use exclamation marks now? Well, exclamation marks are used to express a strong feeling, a strong emotion, like anger, surprise. For example, I don't believe it, or get out. We use exclamation marks with interjections. Interjections like wonderful or ouch, if it is painful, ouch. In exclamation mark, you've got the word exclamation. Exclamation, exclamation is claiming something. When you exclaim something, starting with what or how, usually end with exclamation mark as well. Like, what a lovely idea! Or, how awful you look! Exclamation mark. So remember, a sentence starts with a capital letter and ends with a full stop, or a question mark, or an exclamation mark. But how you end it depends on the intention of your sentence. If it is a statement, a question, an exclamation, surprise, or whatever. And remember as well, capital letters are not just used to start a sentence. They have other many uses. Naming people, naming places, abbreviations. And full stops are not always used to end a sentence. There are many uses of full stops, like with abbreviations.